Hello everyone, and welcome to the annual Women's Organization for War and Military Action Nationwide Awards Ceremony. Today we will honor American women and their role in the United States military throughout history. As you all may know, I am the first woman allowed to serve in a non-nursing capacity in any of the United States Armed Forces. My name is Loretta Perfectus Walsh. My story starts in 1917 when the United States was preparing to fight in World War I. Not enough men were enlisting to fight, so it was determined that women could enlist as well. That's when I decided to join the U.S. Navy. In March of 1917, I was sworn in as Chief Yeoman in the Naval Shipyard in Philadelphia. To convince more men to enlist in the war, Lieutenant Commander Frederick R. Payne swore me in as Chief Petty Officer in a public setting. The Philadelphia newspapers covered the event, and soon it made national news. The headlines essentially told the public that since men wouldn't help in the war, women would have to step up instead. Payne's plan to increase enlistments paid off, and enlistments for both men and women rose dramatically. After World War I continued on an active reserve status until the end of my enlistment. I died at the young age of 29 from tuberculosis and was buried in my hometown under a monument that fittingly read, "Her comrades dedicate this monument to keep alive forever memories of the sacrifice and devotion of womanhood." But while I was the first woman legally allowed to be in the military, I was not the first woman to fight. I will introduce these award-winning soldiers under the name they fought with, but they will each tell you their true name and story. I present this first award of freedom to one of the earliest documented women who fought for the United States of America during the Revolutionary War, Robert Shirtliff. At heart, he devoted himself to freedom.
I am Deborah Sampson, and I disguised myself as a male to fight for independence from Europe during the Revolutionary War. In May of 1772, I decided to enlist under the name of my brother, Robert Shirtliff, into the elite light infantry, who chose their soldiers for being stronger and taller than average men. 2 months later, in a skirmish, I received a painful blow to the thigh and a gash to my forehead. I begged my fellow soldiers not to bring me to the hospital out of fear that my identity would be discovered. However, I was dragged to the nearest doctor. I escaped and removed the bullet myself using a penknife and a sewing needle. However, the injury was never fully treated. I returned to the army and fought on for another year before falling unconscious, to which a doctor discovered my bound breasts, thus discovering my identity as a woman. I was discharged from the army, and in January of 1792, I petitioned the Massachusetts state legislature for my rightful pay during my time at war, and received far less than a man. My friend, Paul Revere, fought for me, requesting that I be awarded a military pension for my service and wounds. Revere wrote that with every person with whom I have conversed about her, and it is not few, speak of her as a woman with handsome talents and good morals.
The next award is one praising the secrecy upheld by a soldier. This award goes to Franklin Thompson. In his soul, he devoted himself to secrecy.
I was born in Canada as Sarah Emma Edmondson. In 1857, to escape my abusive father in an arranged marriage, I fled to the U.S. In order to travel undetected, I became Franklin Thompson. I decided to enlist in the Union Army and join the 2nd Michigan Volunteer Infantry. As I wrote in my memoir, I felt called to go and do what I could for the defense of the right. If I could not fight, I could take the place of someone who could, and thus add one more soldier to the ranks. One of my most memorable battles was the Battle of Williamsburg, where I was caught in the thick of combat and decided to fire right along my comrades, even though I was just a male courier. Later, I was asked to carry out espionage acts, later describing 11 times I was behind enemy lines in my memoir. In 1862, after contracting malaria, I had to leave so that doctors wouldn't discover my true identity. I planned to return after recovery. However, Franklin Thompson was wanted on grounds of desertion, so I decided not to return. I lived the rest of my life as Sarah Emma Edmonds. In 1864, I published my memoirs, Nurse and Spy in the Union Army, which discussed my life as a woman in disguise in the Army. After an 8-year-long battle, with the help of my comrades, Franklin Thompson was cleared of all desertion charges, and I was awarded my military pension in 1884, officially declaring me a combat soldier of the Civil War. I died in 1898 and was reburied with military honors in 1901.
This last award is dedicated to the battle, the capability of a soldier to fight on despite challenges. Jack Williamson, within his life, he devoted himself to the fight.
I am Frances Clayton. When the Civil War started, I did not want my husband John to fight alone, so I enlisted under the name Jack Williamson. We entered into the Missouri Regiment in St. Paul so I could have a better chance of staying hidden. For the next 22 months, I fought as a Union soldier alongside my husband, fighting in 18 battles between 1861 and 1863. I was described by other soldiers as erect and soldierly, with a manly stride, hiding my secret very well. My identity was never revealed, even though I was wounded 3 times during my service. At the Battle of Stone River, I lost my husband when he was shot on the front lines. I had to step over his dead body and continue fighting, helping the Union gain control over central Tennessee. I revealed myself and was discharged from the Army. Little did I know that this was only the start to my publicity as a female soldier. Over 250 women fought in the Civil War disguised as men, most of them on the Union side. I became the face of this movement during this time period. In 1863, after receiving the bounty money owed to my deceased husband, I appeared in many different newspaper articles talking about my double life as a female soldier, and soon became famous.
Despite these fierce women being trailblazers, many others came both before and after them. Today we would like to honor a few of those who came before, women like Hatshepsut of ancient Egypt,
Joan of Arc of medieval France,
Hannah Snell of Regency England,
and Anne Bailey of Victorian England.
were only a few among the vast number of courageous women who fought for their country around the world under a male alias. Now we will shift the focus to important milestones that have allowed women their right to fight today.
There have been countless events that have gone into letting women fight for their country.
Women have consistently taken to the streets in protest for legislation to be passed that would allow them to fight for several of their core values.
Historically, we have had to fight and win several battles on Capitol Hill, and have won quite a few.
Starting in 1779, when Margaret Cochrane Corbin was the first woman to receive military pension after her service disguised as a man.
In 1860, women who fought in the war under a male alias were buried with military honors even after their alias was discovered.
In 1946, the United Nations established the Commission of the Status of Women to safeguard their status and their global rights.
Next, in 1948, the Women's Armed Services Integration Act was passed, being the first official law allowing women into the military. However, it said that only 2% per branch could be women, and a few could serve in military officer positions if combat positions were unavailable.
1 month later, the integration of armed forces allowed Black women to be able to serve as well.
In 1967, President Lyndon B. Johnson opened the ranks to allow women to serve in higher military positions.
Next, in 1969, in Boe versus Colgate-Palmolive Company, the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that women could serve in military jobs that were primarily for men if they met physical requirements.
In 1972, women could finally be able to serve as officers and command male troops.
In 1994, President Bill Clinton rescinded the risk rule, essentially allowing women to serve in any position in the military except direct ground combat.
In 2005, a major milestone occurred in which Army Sergeant Leanne Hester became the first woman to receive the Silver Star Award for her military combat during the Iraq War.
And finally, in 2015, there was full integration of women in armed forces. Women could serve in any military occupational specialty as long as they were qualified and met the standards.
Women have come a long way from where they began. We no longer have to hide in plain sight on the battlefield. We no longer have to face fears of scrutiny for the longing to protect our country.
In terms of secrecy, women no longer have to hide their identities to fight. Women can be who they are while still performing the act they feel called to do.
While these physical words could not represent each struggle and milestone female soldiers had to overcome throughout history, they are yet another step in the right direction.
Women throughout history have felt the responsibility to fight for their country, and since they didn't have the right, as a woman, they had to take matters into their own hands. Thank you for attending the ceremony and allowing us to recognize these brave women and their roles in our history.